When I think about some of the accomplishments of Itasca, breaking down that barrier between Democrat and Republican was also one of those. I remember that the transportation bill in debate shortly after the bridge collapsed in Minneapolis. And it became at the Capitol a Republican and a Democratic issue. It was Itasca that came back and said, look, this is not a Republican-Democratic issue. We need investment in transportation. We can't have bridges collapsing. We can't have trucks that can't travel over our roads because they're so deteriorated. Stop thinking about this from a partisan divide and start thinking about it from what's in the best interest of the community. And as a result of the push from Itasca, in spite of that initial divide, we were able to pass a transportation bill that really significantly invested in what was key to the success of our community.
A great example is Greater MSP, which grew out of specifically a job growth task force concerned with how Minnesota, in fact, was going to rebound after the financial Great Recession. Greater MSP has not only done its job in creating a regional economic development focus that we can market externally and use internally among our member companies, but it has become a place that has spawned a wide range of partnerships that speak to talent development, innovation development, as well as its traditional economic development path.
When we think about the big companies in our region, they have a lot of purchasing power. So they decided that they would commit to buying more from Minnesota companies, Minnesota vendors, with a particular focus on minority and female-owned firms. So they formed the Business Bridge, and that was the idea of bridging our large companies' purchasing departments, bridge them to our smaller local businesses.
They are very instrumental in META really making some great strides with our BIPOC businesses through our Ascend program, where our BIPOC businesses are going through a curriculum for 9 months. And the capstone event is that we bring in procurement officers to really chat with our BIPOC businesses about their products and services. And I'm very, very thrilled to report that we've had 16 BIPOC businesses generate about $18 million in additional contract services.
My proudest Itasca moment was when our former chairs and the working team made the decision to join forces with Greater MSP. Over the past few years, Greater MSP's mission and ours had become even more aligned. Greater MSP included the word inclusive formally in its mission statement about economic growth. And of course, Itasca's all about fulfilling on that inclusive promise. So Itasca needed some resources. We were no longer a purely volunteer organization. We were not able to sustain that because a lot more was expected of us. So we needed some infrastructure. Greater MSP was able to provide some resources for us, and in return, we are helping Greater MSP fulfill its inclusive growth mission.
Mind the Gap was the first study that the Brookings Institute did to help us really understand the picture of disparities in our region, disparities based on race, place, and income. And I think you had to be walking around with your eyes shut not to know that we had very significant challenges, but we had not seen data before. And so we got that. It said, this is, to me, our number one challenge for the future is how are we going to address the disparities that challenge the future of our entire community if we don't step up to them now. I think for many people in the business community, it was one of the first times that they had seen that kind of information. For people working in the not-for-profit world, who we ended up working with quite a bit, they're like, why are you so slow? Pick up the pace, business community, figure out how to engage with us. So we began to do more work with employers. We began to do our own individual work on ourselves and our own mindsets, and then began the efforts on Close the Gap.
Brad and I were both CEOs. We're like, let's just have a leadership group for CEOs in the region. We didn't even have a name for it. I think we called it the Itasca CEO DI Leadership Group or something like that. It's called the DI Collaborative now, but what was created was a learning and safe space, I would say, using our leadership development experts at the Wilder Foundation to help facilitate these leadership cohorts. We used leadership principles that we knew worked for capacity building.
It's really difficult for me to pick out one thing over the 20-year arc of Itasca that has been the most important. I think it's more about who stayed at the table and what happened when bad things happened. I remember bridge collapse discussions, but probably the ones I remember most came after George Floyd's murder, where this group of people who had done a lot and gotten a lot done looked at each other and recognized we were way, way, way far from where we needed to be. And then we began to roll up our sleeves. That's where the Restore, Rebuild, Reimagine Fund of the Minneapolis Foundation came from. That's how we put together $50 million to rebuild so many things. All of these things and many, many more came out of Itasca.
Our ability to attract people to come to this region, affordability and housing was central. And it particularly became poignant during the Great Recession, 2008, 2009, when real estate was really dead. I think that one of the things that we realized Itasca could do was to help bring employers in. What can employers do for their employees in terms of housing? What can we do in terms of innovation? How do we think about controlling costs, not just costs of constructing, but the costs of owning and maintaining. Everything from energy costs that Excel can lean into reducing the costs of heating. What can we do in terms of land costs? And that's where transportation sometimes fits with housing, is we think about all the development along these light rail lines. I think the Green Line extension, not even open, a few more years, there's already $2.8 billion of permitted construction along that line, and 80% of that is housing.
The Northside Achievement Zone exists to end multi-generational poverty. And we need business partners who are not just helping us with financial resources, but also intellectual resources and innovation. And so there's two things that Itasca Project has done that's been extremely meaningful in terms of the work that my organization is doing on the ground in North Minneapolis surrounding families and children, largely African American, largely low income. And two things, the Minnesota Early Learning Foundation, otherwise known as MELF, and the First 1,000 Days, coming up with a high-quality early childhood rating system called Parent Aware was innovative, it was cutting edge, and it's what our parents deserve. They deserve to have their children at high-quality, 4-star rated early childhood centers. And then to also have scholarships, because 70% of our families make $30,000 or less. So not only did MELF come up with the Parent Aware, but also the whole scholarship model. Huge, huge.
The number one concern, the number one problem, the number one opportunity in this country is workforce. And so we have to compete, and we have to compete fiercely for that workforce.
I was asked to co-chair a committee focused on workforce alignment, and I was partnered up with former Chancellor Stephen Rosenstone from Minnesota State, and we spent 2 years trying to identify what can the state do across all these different constituencies to make sure we have the talent we need for the future. After about 2 years, we wrote this white paper, and we thought our work was going to be done. And then we had people telling us, we can't stop, we need to keep doing this. And that really bred real-time talent. Minnesota's been competing to be the hub for semiconductors in the US. A lot of federal money out there under the CHIPS initiative. And real-time talent worked with Greater MSP to actually apply and compete for those dollars. So real-time talent brought expertise, because if you're going to be a hub for semiconductors and have 10,000 jobs, you've got to have 10,000 qualified people that can fill those jobs.
One of the greatest Itasca moments happened last year in 2023, when following the integration together, we were able to win the National Tech Hubs competition.
We needed a convening force, and that's where we turned to Itasca and Greater MSP to be that organizer of this effort. We've already been designated as a tech hub and the med tech hub, the only one med tech hub in the country. So there, in and of itself, is a great honor.
I think Itasca also needs to take credit for being the initial catalyst. We got to read the article in the McKinsey Journal that explained what Itasca had done. And Dick and I came back after that meeting and said, we are really inspired What they're doing in Minneapolis is an example of what needs to be done in communities around our country. But we need to start in our own sandbox. So we began together meeting with CEOs in Orange County, saying, what can we do to make a difference here if we brought our CEOs together to think about a community impact? So they were all in, but we also had other CEOs from around the country. And at the end of that meeting, we all said, let's expand this group. And this group has now grown into what is called the National Talent Collaborative. It's having a collective impact across America as we help galvanize business leaders, learning from each other, driving best practice, and making an accelerated difference in their communities. So we are forever grateful to our friends in Minneapolis, Saint Paul for their work.